What's up, my friends, and welcome into another edition of the Run It Back podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Whether you're watching us on the YouTube channel or hanging out with us on our audio-only platforms, we appreciate you. We have an extra guest today. As you can see, I have a little gremlin trying to mess around with my microphone settings here. I think it's the same for the actual movie Gremlins. I can't feed him after midnight. He can't get wet, and he's probably going to mess with these settings all the time. But Tyler Zulli, Frank Klose, and Paxton Zulli hanging out with us today because my sitter is on vacation all week. So I am here just hanging out with my son today.
Everybody needs a vacation.
Including the sitter, which unfortunately, I will say this. It's a good thing it wasn't last week because my wife worked almost 80 hours last week and we would have been so SOL.
Yeah, that's how parenting is.
So he has what is one of his toys and also a cat toy, which is, of course, it's like you buy your kids all these toys and books and games, and all they want to play with is the box and the cat toy and the things they're not supposed to play with.
That's right, and I have many toys in the basement that were must-haves that just collect dust and spider webs.
Oh, I'm expecting them to all sit in the storage unit at some point. But all right, let's get into some baseball conversation today because a lot to get into. The Phillies have played some extraordinary baseball over the last week, sans the last two nights. 9 in a row at one point, 3 straight series sweeps, taking down the Twins, the Marlins, and the Cardinals. And I understand, Frank, that, those 3 teams, they're not the greatest teams in the world. They're kind of on the fringe of both postseason spots. The AL's a mess. So the Twins could get in with a sub 500 record. Somebody could get in with a sub 500 record. But, in a world where taking care of business is the necessity, the Phillies took care of business over those 3 series and gave themselves a little bit of breathing room in the NL wildcard standings.
Yeah, I mean, even the quote-unquote bad teams win a third of the time. So it is saying something that you, in 3 straight series, and not even that the teams are bad. I mean, a lot of those teams were kind of challenging for playoffs, right? So,
sure,
the Marlins are still part of the story of the playoffs, right? So Twins, part of the story for the playoffs. So, yeah, so these are the Cardinals, of course, always hanging around. I think that this was important because they couldn't just win these series to really help cement their spot in the wild card. They needed to sweep some series, and so still making up for some of the lost time at the beginning of the season. Now that there's 5 weeks to go, you really need to make these count.
Yeah, and now you've got this series against the Mariners where you've lost the series, you've lost the first 2. Excuse me. An opportunity, to potentially take the finale of it and not get swept yourselves. But I wonder, I think the question that I've seen a lot on social media the last couple of days is there a difference for this Phillies team in facing good pitching versus bad pitching? Or I shouldn't say bad pitching, but good pitching versus guys that are, major league pitchers, right? You've seen Kirby and you've seen Gilbert the last 2 nights. You're going to see Wu today. I mean, that's pretty much the 3 best starters the Mariners can throw at you. You're going to get those 3 guys in sequential order. Is there a balance between, hey, you were at some point going to lose a game, you won 9 in a row, I'm not going to sit here and complain by any stretch of the imagination, versus, now that you're seeing some good pitching, you're hitting the West Coast, now maybe there's a little bit of a regression period. You know what I mean? Like, where are you sitting on that balance?
It seems like when they go to the West Coast, they struggle. I mean, it's just, it's been a grind. They exerted a lot of energy to sweep those 3 games. And now to go play on the West Coast at 9:40 p.m. Eastern, it still feels like that people have trouble doing that. I even though I know they're major leaguers and they should be ready for such thing, it's not the typical for them. So I do understand that that's part of an interruption of sorts, right? So I don't fault them for that. I'm sure we'll get into Zack Wheeler in a minute, but obviously he's in his little rough patch right now. So, and even last night they got a good start from Nola again. It's just
sure.
a shame that they didn't pull through. So I think there's plenty that went into the 2 games that they lost. So, I would have liked to have seen them score more than 1 run last night. I thought that they could have taken advantage of that first inning a little bit more. where it seemed like they were threatening, or excuse me, second inning, could have gotten more than one. But overall, you're seeing a lot of what you wanted from them at the plate. Better at bats. Um, they did walk 3 times yesterday. They started walking a little bit more. I was happy about that. But yeah, I think I don't say today's a must win, but I'd like to see Luzardo come out, give a good start. Phillies put some runs on the board, and then feel good going on to the next spot.
Yeah, I think that the last time we spoke, they had won 5 in a row, and then they won the 6th game later that day, and then they proceeded to win 3 more. And I know that. Listen, Philadelphia is perpetual doom and gloom, no matter how how much success they had leading right up to it. But I'm going to give you these numbers. This was prior to Monday. So this was from 8-9 through 8-23. They were tied for 3rd in the league in runs and hits. They had the 2nd fewest strikeouts in that 2-week span. Their average was the best. Their walk rate was the best. Their OBP was the best. Their OPS was tied for the best. Over a 2-week stretch, no matter who you play, and I understand they didn't play, they weren't playing the Braves or the Dodgers or the Brewers or the Yankees, right? I get all that. They weren't playing the Rays, but you play who's in front of you, and they did a really nice job of executing and beating the teams that were in front of you. And so those numbers specifically, I think, that to me made me feel like it was a different team over that 2-week stretch. The approach felt better. The swings were better. There was less flailing involved. It felt like Luis Ariz was getting to these guys.
And I think bigger than that, I mean, one of the reasons you felt so good about those 9 games in a row was how the game 9 ended, right? I mean, that the Phillies with 2 outs didn't quit.
Yep. And several times with 2 strikes.
Yep. Several times with 2 strikes. They did not quit. And I think that kind of set a tone. I don't think 1 or 2 bad games is going to kind of make them forget about that
right.
They're not out of it. In fact, I mean, even Zack Wheeler's start where he struggled, even down 5-1, they still seemed like that they felt like they were in it. And now, of course, it ended up getting a little bit off the rails, ended up giving up 9 runs total. But
yeah.
I didn't get the sense that the Phillies were like, oh, well, I guess this is a loss. They kind of kept going. Now, of course, once the Mariners got runs 6, 7, and 8, I think that's when it
the back-to-back home runs really kind of just broke the back a little bit. I think that was kind of where it was a breaking point for them. And like you said, you probably would have liked to see a little bit more than the 1 yesterday. Probably would have liked to see a little bit more than the 2 on Monday. But I think this feels more like ebbs and flows of a season. And as you said, going out on the West Coast than it does just. Well, they ran into good pitching, and this is because like they did. They've run into two good starters. Now I know that George Kirby's numbers aren't as good as like I expected them to be, but he's still a very good pitcher, and he's a 7-pitch mix. He becomes almost impossible to figure out what he's going to throw. Even last night, a couple of times, Ben Davis was like, "Is that a changeup? Was that a like?" You know what I mean? Because he mixes in all these pitches so efficiently. But you ran into Logan Gilbert, you ran into George Kirby the last 2 nights. They both pitched well. I thought Kirby was really effective. 70 pitches through 6 last night. Ends up giving them a really strong outing. It just felt to me like this was a more of a ebbs and flows of the season. Whereas if they would have gone, 5-4 in that 9-game stretch and then gone out to Seattle and lost 2 in a row, you'd have gone, okay, this is just a team that's not beating good pitching.
And let's remember, both of us picked the Mariners for the playoffs, right? So they have a lot of talent. And not to mention that at home, the Mariners are 7 games over 500. So they do win at home.
Yes,
so
and their pitching is significantly better at home.
Yes, I mean, it's a big stadium, so
Sure.
And they know how to pitch to it. So I thought that would help Aaron Nola out. Of course, his 1 home run we just barely got over the corner.
Yeah.
But yeah, having a deep park is definitely. And by the way, the Mariners set up their pitching to play to that. So
sure.
So I think that I think that they're not to be taken lightly when you go to their stadium.
So before we get into Nola and get into Wheeler, you have in the headline, kind of closing in on the Braves. They have closed in on the Braves significantly. It was 8.5 at one point. I believe it's now 3.5. It may be 4.5. I haven't had a chance to look, but I believe it's 3.5. Because the Braves have struggled
4.5
a little bit.
Now with the Braves win last
Okay, so
night.
the Braves did win yesterday, so
they
4.5.
They also won late.
Again, I don't think we said this last week. I don't necessarily think the Phillies are going to win the NL East, but at least it gives them something to strive for. It gives them something to dedicate the rest of the 29 games of the season to. And to me, I think there's a difference between let's get in and breathe versus let's chase down the team in front of us. And even if we don't successfully do it, we've had a reason to continue to play strong baseball. And maybe that's the difference between being the second wildcard team and being the third wildcard team.
Yeah, I agree. And the Braves, I was asked this question on the mailbag on the radio yesterday, but I tend to think that the Phillies, for them to catch the Braves, they can't just beat the Braves in these 7 games like 4-3.
Right.
They need to go like 6-1, and then
which is a really hard ask. Yeah. But you're right. If you're thinking about catching a division leader at this point, that's kind of where you're at.
And the Braves in their schedule, they're going to get a lot of their tougher teams sooner than later, but they close out with kind of 9 teams that are not going to make the playoffs.
Right.
Phillies have to face the Brewers, and last I checked, I did count it out. Mizorowski's supposed to face them one of those starts.
Okay.
And the Phillies are going to face the Rays. Both those teams probably won home field advantage in the playoffs. So
sure.
they're 6 of their last 9 games. While the Braves don't have that kind of challenge. They get a lot of that out of the way early. So the Phillies, I can see the Phillies actually pulling up even with the Braves at some point. I still tend to favor the Braves at this stage of the season.
Yeah, the Phillies are getting, like you said, they're getting those teams now, right? Like we talked about it a couple weeks ago, where it was the Twins, sub 500 team. Maybe they can fight for a playoff spot, but sub 500 team. Cardinals sitting around 500, Marlins sitting around 500, Mariners sub 500, Angels coming up well below 500. At this point of the season, might be one of the worst teams in baseball, especially with the fire sale that they had. It's kind of like they need to get those. It's stockpiling wins now, in the understanding that coming up, you're going to be playing those good teams down the stretch. You do still have a ton of games against the Braves. You do still have the Brewers and the Rays, like you mentioned. You have the Washington Nationals in there. You have the Mets in there. But the Mets have played better baseball as of late. Not to say that they're not threatening for a playoff spot, but they could be that team that upsets standings down the stretch. The team that you don't want to play. They're playing a little bit better as of late, so you have to start to stockpile those wins. And that's what they've done, because yes, they've lost this series to the Mariners. Yes, it's been an offensively frustrating series. But if you said over these 4 series, even if they get swept out today, if you said over these 4 series, they would go 9-3 in total, we would have all taken it in a heartbeat. Yep. Right. And how it happened was 9-0 to 9-3, frustrating series in Seattle. But if you would have said to me, hey, they're going to win 2 out of 3 against the Cardinals, 2 out of 3 against the Marlins, they're going to sweep out the Twins, and then they're going to win 1 out of 3 against Seattle and go 9-3. But again, like, heck yeah, that's a good run. That's a good 4-series stretch.
And we'll see if they take care of business against the Angels. I mean, sure. On paper, they should. But again, you're in someone else's home ballpark. Teams tend to do better at their home ballpark, right? Thus, home field advantage, as we've heard a million times. And like I said, the bad teams, quote unquote bad teams, they win a game every series, usually on average, right? So you need to find a way to do better than that. I think even if the good team comes in, takes 2 out of 3, you're only moving 1 game north of the 500 mark. You need to do a little bit better than that right now, I think.
So let's talk about how they can do that. And a very clear-cut path to how they can do that is the guy that was on the mound last night, and a guy that we did not expect to be a clear-cut path, but has continued to pitch really well basically since the calendar flipped to June. But more importantly, has pitched really well since the calendar flipped to July. Sub-3 ERA in his last 5 starts, sub-4 ERA now since the month of July. I think it's 9 starts, sub-4 ERA. Aaron Nola's stuff looks better. The knuckle curve looks sharper. The fastball command is better. This version of Aaron Nola is somebody that you can not only rely upon in the back half of your rotation, but somebody you could potentially rely upon to start a postseason game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, things can change quickly in this game, and I think with Aaron Nola, it took him a while to get used to the pitch clock. He's somebody that really thrives on rhythm. Yep. And then the ABS seemed to have thrown his game off a little bit too. I mean, not to mention he was hurt last year, right? So think all these things kind of came together, and he's learning how to adjust. And took him a while, I think, but I love him painting the corners. I know the ABS that frustrated him some because he got a lot of strikes that were probably right out of the zone, barely. But that's part of his success, and I think it was helpful. He went to went to the Field of Dreams game where he did not have the ABS. I think it gave him a little extra confidence, and he looked really, really good. And you know what? My perspective is this: pitch like you're going to pitch. You'll probably burn those two challenges quickly enough. If they perceive you painting the corners, they
Sure.
might challenge some pitches that they're going to lose. So all you need to do is burn two of them, right? And then you're in the clear. So I think you should just focus, pitch his game, and he'll be all right. Especially in the bigger ballparks, you feel better about him. But I mean, aside from that barely home run yesterday, he's kind of calmed down on the home runs as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that ball was hit. It was hit hard, but it wasn't a screamer by any means. And like you said, it kind of barely clipped the outfield wall. And one of the big things for him, it's been that way his entire career. But one of the big things for him is he needs to get ahead. He needs to throw strike one. Last year, he did not throw strike one nearly enough for the whole season. This year, at the beginning of the year, he was doing it a little bit better, but he's substantially better at it, in the second half of the season. He's getting ahead, which allows him to be somebody who can confidently pitch 92, 93, 91, and live on the outer edges. Throw that cutter away from right-handed hitters. Throw the breaking ball down and in off the back foot of left-handed hitters. Comfortably throw the two-seamer and run it back on the hands of lefties. It gives him it's optionality, right, at that point. And that a guy that doesn't throw particularly hard, whose best pitch is his breaking ball, needs that optionality to thrive. And he's been able to do that thanks to the strength of strike one.
And what a difference it makes for the whole team, giving him as many innings as he has lately. That makes the bullpen so much better,
Sure.
because they were at right before this stretch, they were at such a pivotal point where they were just so exhausted and overworked. They went into that one game basically thinking, all right, well, look, it's going to be Andrew Painter and Alan Ron for the whole game, and we're just going to have to suck it up and deal with it. And of course, Jonathan Boland was the only one really available to come in and get the save. But
right.
But since that bullpen reset, the bullpen hasn't been overworked. And so a lot of credit to Nola, a lot of credit to Painter, because back-to-back days they were coming in and making the bullpen throw 4 and 5 a day. And that
nine innings in 2 starts type of
and
burn.
that kills you for days to come. So really, really big that they're stepping up that way. And also, too, I know we'll talk about Wheeler in a minute, but the fact that Wheeler hung in there even after getting shelled early also helped protect that bullpen.
Yeah, and you've seen that a couple of times now you mentioned Painter too, right? Painter did it the other night where he gave up the grand slam in the first, ends up giving up 5, and it's stat line wise it's not a good start, but he hangs in there and gives you enough innings to at least kind of clear your bullpen and reset, and you're not having to go through all of that unnecessary steps to get to the 27th out of the game.
Yeah, very, 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 very big, I think, for that stretch the Phillies won 9 games in a row.
So Nola has kind of been the positive light on this. Zack Wheeler has struggled. There's no question about it. Zack Wheeler has struggled over his last 5 or 6 starts at this point, basically since the All-Star break. And he mentioned it. We've talked about it. The command is just not there. The command has been subpar. And I wouldn't even say subpar for Zack Wheeler standards. I would just say subpar in general. But specifically for Zack Wheeler standards, a guy who basically throws darts whenever and wherever he wants, has really struggled with his command in the last couple of starts. He said, he can't throw pitches for strikes other than the fastball. He's really not able to get ahead. He's not staying ahead, and he's not trusting his auxiliary pitches right now. And you're seeing it. He's leaving a lot over the heart of the plate. The home run to Cal Raleigh, the home run to Julio Rodriguez, both of them were missed locations. And that's kind of been his issue the last 5 or 6 starts is his command's been really troublesome.
Yeah, and that means I'm not worried because he's got his velocity still. That's important. He still trusts his fastball. So that's a starting point. But beyond that, his comments about, it's just the fastball, and that's the only thing that I could trust right now, kind of means, one, I think we have reasonable assurance he's not hurt. I think that's big.
Right.
And
he said basically, I don't feel hurt. I'm just struggling.
Right. So I think that the idea that he stayed in the game is a big positive because how are you going to get your command back? Well, you just got to keep pitching.
Yep.
So even if the game was sort of lost at that point, I know a lot of fans were like, "Why is he still in there? Well, get him out of there." He wasn't like extra labored. So to get Zack Wheeler right, Zack Wheeler needs to throw the ball, and so I actually consider it a good sign that he hung in as long as he did, that he threw a normal course of pitches for the most part, and hung in that game. So besides saving the bullpen, he's going to have to pitch his way out of this. I mean, I think that's the only real solution. And so he had more opportunities to play around with it because you can pitch off to the side all you want in your bullpen day. There's nothing like facing real major league hitters, and so I think I'm kind of confident that given his experience and his ability to pitch, he will pitch his way out of this. If his velocity was down, then I would worry. I'm not as worried because it's just simply his command.
But yeah, I think you're 100% right there, where it's kind of just a at this, like, I've seen people talk about phantom IL and things like that, and two things about that. One, they don't really have the depth for a phantom IL, even if he was hurt and they could somehow magically say he wasn't, or somehow magically say that he was. The second part is, if he did take the phantom IL stint and they had the depth and they were able to do that, it's really, really difficult to come back off 15 days off, because that would be the minimum that he would have to sit, would be 15 days. He'd effectively miss 3 starts, maybe even more. It would be really, really difficult to come back in what would be the middle of September, ramp back up, and get into postseason form. So I would agree with you. Like, it's not something that I love. I don't love the idea of just like, hey, going out there, and if you get your butt kicked, you get your butt kicked, which is unfortunate. But I do think he's earned he's got the gravitas. He's earned the ability to say, hey, I'm going to pitch through this. We'll figure this thing out together. I'm Zack Wheeler. I'm effectively, I was having this conversation with a buddy the other day. There's an argument to be made that he may be the best starting pitcher in baseball since the Phillies acquired him. And when you have that luxury in your back pocket, I do think you get a little extra runway to say, hey, let's figure this command thing out together.
Yeah, he's Matt Klentak's crowning achievement in my eyes.
For sure.
But yeah, to me, it's just the ramp up coming back from an IL stint. I just don't think you want to do that with 5 weeks to go in a season. So that right. alone would be why I would be out on that idea.
Yeah. So Wheeler's going to unfortunately just kind of have to figure this thing out as it goes. It's just how it is. Let's talk a little bit about the offense, because we talked a little bit about it, about Seattle and things like that. We talked a lot about Luis Arraez hitting fourth and what that impacts and how that impacts the lineup. I think today I almost wanted to more shift this into Luis Arraez, his existence in this lineup, I think has made an indelible mark on this team over the last couple of weeks, to where they had that meeting that they keep talking about, and the one that apparently opened everybody's eyes. I don't know what the heck got said in that meeting other than like, hey, your approach stinks. Let's figure this out together. But I do think that having a hitter like Luis Arraez, a guy that allows the ball to get deep, a guy that can hit with 2 strikes, a guy who's not afraid to hit with runners in scoring position or hit behind in the count, I do think that has some merit to this lineup as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. Alec Bohm has even commented as such. And, when I look at an Alec Bohm, he's had the same, we are the Run It Back podcast, right? I mean, he's had the same people in the lineup with him year after year after year after year. He's finally seen a different approach from somebody. And right. So I think that's really rubbed off on him. And Bohm is, in my eyes, a contact hitter, and Arraez is the contact hitter in baseball. He's I feel like his presence has taught Bohm so much, and Bohm even openly acknowledges it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the Bohm that the ideal world Bohm, because I think we can all, like, if he were 6'5", should he have more power? Yeah, he should, but he doesn't, and he's never going to be a 25 home run guy. The ideal world Alec Bohm is gaps to gaps power, guy who hits with runners in scoring position, and a guy who doesn't strike out a lot. Now, the downside is, of course, he's not particularly fast, and he puts the ball in play a lot. he's going to hit into a ton of double plays, as he has throughout the course of his career, and he has this season. But a guy who hits gap to gap, a guy who's good with runners in scoring position, a guy who doesn't mind hitting with 2 outs or with 2 strikes. Like, he doesn't get to 2 strikes a lot because he's an early count swinger. But like that type of guy, the guy who is driving the ball into the left and right center field gaps, that's the perfect encapsulation of Alec Boehm. And that's the guy that we saw in 2023 make the All-Star team, almost drive 100 runs in. That's the guy that this year might get to 90 RBI and basically have stunk for 3/4 of the season.
Yeah, it's fascinating to watch. I mean, I do think that the consistency has been the problem with Alec Boehm. I mean, hopefully he rides this the rest of the way. You want him hot the rest of the way. You want him feeling confident the rest of the way, because the thing I like least about Alec Boehm is the temper tantrums, which makes me think his head is in the wrong spot. But yeah, he's in his thriving season right now, and I think he loves hitting behind Arise. I mean, I think the 2 righties that you have to count on this lineup, because you have to, or Turner and Boehm, 2 of them have to hit somewhere between 1 and 5, just the way that the roster is, and so you needed this to work, and just him hitting behind Arise, who's given Bryce Harper more to hit. Because that Arise is going to put the ball in play all the time, and then after
and
Arise is on base,
and Harper's OBP has skyrocketed since Arise has joined the team.
Sure has. So, I don't know if it's too early to talk about trying to extend Arise, but I think that's a conversation to have, because it's really made this lineup function a lot better. And this was not the right-handed bat that we all said that they needed. This was not the power bat they said they all needed.
Right.
And I was shocked that he became the cleanup hitter on this team, but we're seeing the effects. I mean, you know what? The guys in front of him, a lot of them, mentioned Boehm having all those RBIs. He's also left a lot of guys on base.
Sure.
So having the contact hitters driving those runs in and creating more opportunities for Boehm at that.
Well, and you talk about the righties that need to produce. It's the guy that's hitting second. It's the guy who's hitting fifth. And the guy who's hitting fifth has had a really nice stretch. I still think that this is probably the final stretch of Alec Boehm's tenure as a Philly. But I do think that it has been a productive one so far. But again, I see this tweet from this morning from Ryan Lawrence. Trey Turner's 677 OPS. Did you see this tweet?
I did not.
So there are 137 qualified hitters in baseball this year. Where do you think Trey Turner's 677 OPS ranks?
Oh, it's got to be. How many did you say total there were?
137.
137. I know Boehm was at the bottom of that at one point.
He is no longer, but he was there for a long time.
He's climbed up and he's past Turner. So 125.
Almost spot on. 122.
Wow.
So there is and I don't need Trey Turner has, I think, 17 or 18 home runs. I don't need him to be an enormous extra base hits guy. Doubles would be great. A handful of triples would be nice because of the speed. But I am not, and I think you and I have been doing the show now. This is episode 25. You have probably heard me talk about batting average maybe 4 times in 25 episodes, because I'm not a huge batting average guy. If you are somebody whose OBP is strong, a la Kyle Schwarber, if you're somebody whose slugging is strong, a la Kyle Schwarber, but you get my point. You can have those other things offset at a low average. If you're a extra base hits machine, if you're a get on base machine, if you're somebody who can, be a stolen bags threat, you can offset bad average in other ways in baseball in 2026. I don't need you to be Juan Pierre at the top of my lineup to be at the top of my lineup, but you have to do one of those other things. But with Trey Turner specifically, the reason I do use batting average as an example as to his struggles is I watched a guy win a batting title last year, hit above 300. Now his BABIP, I would imagine, was probably higher. Sometimes you do get lucky a little bit, but not win a batting title, get lucky. And so for a guy like myself who does not use batting average all that much, he's one of the examples where I do have to use average because it's dipped so significantly. And when his average dips, his OBP goes down because he doesn't walk a ton. and therefore his OPS is eventually going to go down. That's why you see a guy in the 660s hitting in your 2-hole.
Yeah, they just don't have a lot of other options. I mean,
Right.
the only other righty in the lineup is JT Realmuto, and he's 35. And
Don't want him hitting second.
no, and I don't want him hitting fifth either, which is a shame.
No.
I mean, in fact, I actually like that he gets fewer at bats down in the lineup because you want to protect his body so he can catch.
Right.
So I'm happy with him at the bottom of the lineup for that reason alone, because he's still a really good receiver. So yeah, they got to find another right-handed bat this offseason. I don't know where they're going to find it, but it will be nice to have someone or a switch hitter. I don't know, someone that can well, I'd say play the outfield, but Turner could end up there. But there's a lot that needs to happen to get this right. But for now, this is what you have.
So this is just pontificating to end the show, just kind of a fun topic to wrap things up. What do you think is a more likely look in 2027? Bryson Stott at third, Luis Arraez at second, and Turner and Brandon Marsh still in their positions, or a new third baseman, Bryson Stott at short, and Trey Turner in somewhere in the outfield? Which of those do you think right now is probably a more likely scenario?
Probably the I think Bryson Stott's going to stick it at third.
So
I think Arraez will return, but they also have to do something.
I think we have one more year of Trey Turner at short still, because I do think the outfield switch is coming, but I'm not sure it's next season.
And Brian Rincon is perhaps going to get a look at AAA before this season's over.
Sure.
Won an Eastern League Player of the Week award. You know, they're one of their best prospects is a shortstop, and so I think that they might be looking at him and saying, maybe he can help us soon. So yeah, that wouldn't surprise me if they gave it another year. I wonder if Brandon Marsh will be back, just because I know we're seeing him regress to Brandon Marsh, not the first half All-Star. So I think they would love to not have to worry about that platoon, but yeah, they have some big projects ahead.
If Aiden Miller were healthy, does that answer change?
You know what? That he could be your second baseman. Although you know what, you have to be careful with the rise, because he'll be another 30-year-old next year. Depends how many years he wants.
So that's the thing. Like if they told me that Arraez signs a 3-year extension, I would probably sign that contract today.
Yep.
If they said Arraez wants 5, I'd have a harder time getting around that number.
Same, but this is a guy that nobody wanted to sign this past season.
Sure.
So I don't know what I guess the defense was the trepidation. I mean, the year before he had played first base, so a lot of teams probably saw him as a first baseman. I think he's played his way into have teams see him as a second baseman now, which might give him more suitors.
So obviously just kind of having some fun with the lineup construction as the show unfolds. 9-2 over their last 11, 4.5 back of the Braves, but more importantly have given themselves some breathing room in the National League wildcard standings. They're 2 up on the Padres. They are 4 up on the Arizona Diamondbacks, and everybody else is kind of in the rearview mirror at this point. Not to say that they can't catch them. Still almost 30 games to go, but they've given themselves that breathing room that didn't exist a couple of weeks ago. So at least they have that to fall back on. But that will wrap things up for the Run It Back podcast. The rest of this series coming up against the Seattle Mariners today before they head on over to Anaheim for a set against the Angels, and then to wrap up this West Coast trip against the Arizona Diamondbacks early next week. So for my partner, Frank Klose, we'll talk all about that next week. I'm Tyler Zulli saying thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you're listening on any of the audio-only platforms, leave a 5-star review. We'd greatly appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button and hit the subscribe button on the way out as well. We'll be back with more Run It Back conversation and Phillies conversation next week. Same time, same podcast. We'll talk to you then. See you.